So what we're trying to do here is get this Garmin to mount, the transducer, to mount to the Guardian plate from the Hobie Outback. Retractable plates, since this is a side view, we want it on the outside. So what I've done so far is removed the original plate that was here, and I'm putting in this little bumper plate just by using the existing screws that came out of the other one. And we'll screw that one on, keeping that. But we needed a hole pattern, and we needed a couple other things. So in the original format, these two identical items were here. And I had to take those off because we've got to mount some screws on there. So there were two of them, one on each side. And this was used to mount your transducer on the inside of the Guardian plate if you had one that was just shooting straight down. And it's, as we know, is Hobie's associated with, or design their stuff to work with the Lowrance, which are fine units, but in this case we're going with this Garmin. So Garmin sends you a plate that will mount on the trolling motors, and this mounts to that. But anyway, so I used this hole pattern and I placed it on here, and I lined it up nice and straight, used a ruler to get my lines nice and straight, and I have drilled 6 holes there. Now just real quick, there are 7 on here, but when you mount this on the back of a boat, it only uses these 5, so I think we're okay. 6 versus 5 on a boat doing 40 as opposed to a kayak doing 4 to 6. So now what we have to do is I have to remove some of this right here because, as you can see, this transducer cable is going to be in the way from mounting it flat. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to cut out, probably cut out this little crossbar here, and I'll cut back into here a little bit. By the way, I used an 11/64 to do the 6 holes there, drill bit, and this is a 23/64 bit that we're going to use to drill right into there. So we drilled our hole out here, and then we cut this little piece away that was right there. Got rid of that. Just use some wire clippers to do that. Now look how much fun we're gonna have, because this is just about a 32nd too wide to go right through that hole and be perfect. So now we gotta open up that just a little bit, and I'm gonna do up here rather than back here because I don't want to make the holes weak back there. So use a file, I think, and file that out. So I took a file to it, opened it up, we got the cable through, and then I had to pull the cable back through because when this went in, it wasn't quite far enough down to line up with the holes. So I had to take that cable all the way out again, and the reason I did that, instead of just kind of pushing it up there, is because I've made this mistake before and cut a cable on accident. So anyway, pull that out, use the file a little bit more, and if you can see, I put it right back to where it's just starting to encroach on this sound mark. So if they're consistent on their graphics on their plates, which I don't know if they are, that's about where it went through. But you can see where my holes are, they're just behind where the plate goes in, which, if you can see there, right there and right there. Those are the locations. Now you can avoid all of this drilling and opening up if you don't want to use the bumper plate, and you just want to keep this plate in. You could put this up to pretty much the front, and then you'd be able to use, you probably still have to put these holes right about there, or I don't know, be tricky to get that front one on there, but you certainly could go without the bumper on there. But you know, if you ever banged into a rock, that's probably not going to be all that great. And the idea of Hobie on their videos is that when this goes in, that it protects the front of that, and when it hits a rock, it hits this first, and then when you have it spring, it drops down and protects it. I'm sure you'll probably still get a scratch mark across there, but anyway, that's what I chose to do. Another thing I forgot to line up. If you look, there's a little hole right there, just in front of the middle set of screws, and that right there, kind of along that edge there, that is for this little pin. That is some alignment pin that they have on their plate. So if you can see that little pin right there, that had to go. So 1/8 inch drill bit, give me a little bit of leeway, and I measured over and it was about 11 millimeters, I think, over. So anyway, so we're gonna hand start all these screws, and they come with a little lock washer on there. So we'll get them lined up in the holes and hand start them. You're just gonna go back through and give these all one last little snug down with the lock washers in there. Try not to get too crazy. That looks pretty damn good. So now I slid my little bumper plate in there, and I'm going to put in, hand start my screws. Again, those are the existing screws that you take out of the flat plate. It goes there. And yeah, great ones. But you got to remove all 6 of these screws to get the retraction feature to work. So now with all 6 of the screws removed, you can see that it retracts. I don't know if you yeah. Anyway, you get the idea. It retracts. So I'm not sure how well you can see this, but I have taken this little pair of vice grips and pulled the cord as far as I could pull it, and then clamped it right up next to the boat down there. And what that does, gives me, this won't retract when I hook it up to this. Okay, so we've untied this multiple knots from the pulley unit here, and we're going to put it around this, and as the Hobie videos have said, he says a double overhand knot. Now we're going to feed all the cable down into the hole. once we do that, we're going to flip this over and put it back on with the 3 screws, the 3 screw holes that will go in. Okay, 3 screws are in, it's on, retracts, now we'll flip it over. Okay, important tip. Make sure that this rope at the end of it is coming out towards the narrow side. That way you don't have to take it all apart again and fish it through, because you're not going to be able to see that, but anyway, well, you might. That has to go and has to line up so the pulley works, which all makes sense. So now we get to retie it back on there. So the next issue I ran into was the size of the plugs that are given to you by Hobie. They only give you a couple of each, and in this case I need 3 of this size, which is kind of, I guess, a medium size of the holes. This one's too big to use. This one you could use the bottom hole, you could, I guess, silicone the top. But I chose to use a smaller single size, and I just took a 1/4 inch bit and I put this into the plug and into its place. You remove 2 of them and then use the drill to hollow it out, and basically got it to about to the size there. So here I've pulled the transducer cable from underneath after feeding it through the, hooking up the Guardian, hooking up the pulley cable, and fed it into the other scupper hole plug, whatever they call it. You take the gasket and you take that lipped side and you put that over the end of the plug like so. Feed that on the lip side first, then that ends up coming up like so, and you set that in there, put it in. Feed your cable all the way out through here, and next we're going in to bring both of the cable to power and the transducer cable through that. Alright, so we fed our cables through. We're gonna put one of the rubber grommets on here, and it feeds through the bottom. Keep that watertight seal. So I got a couple little prongs right there. It slides in like so. And now we're gonna take it and use our rubber gasket up against there and put our 3 screws on. Easiest to reach these from underneath the bar. It's best not to tighten these too much. Hobie says to not to compress the gasket too much, so just kind of snug them. And your cords, you're going to have to pre-measure. So they're going to come up through here. And I made them long enough to go in here and still have a little bit of room. Okay, so down in there, I zip tied, curled it up, zip tied it together, and then zip tied it to an existing zip tie in the kayak. It holds on some flotation. I don't know if you can see, that's pretty dark, but there is this block that they give you, Garmin gives you, to noise reduction, some sort of thing you gotta do. So clamp it on there, overlapping, and then I butt spliced the power line, which I just ran up in the kayak to my battery up front. And as I was telling you before, I've got this connector here, and the reason for that is I unplug the battery so I don't have to take it out. I just unplug this, and I've got this same connector on the end here and on a small charger that I have. So I unplug this and then plug the charger into the battery, and then when I'm done, reverse it. And I'm just gonna tape them up with some electrical tape. Zip tie this to the mast, hold it in place, the cable, and we'll be ready to fire it up. Sits down the tabs. There we go.